And I want to follow. That's a very powerful point that both of you made. You know, I think I have permission. I spoke to some of Ray Charles' closest associates, and they wanted to talk to me before this panel. They said, Ray Charles will be very happy that you're doing this, but they wanted to share with me some of the information they knew about Ray Charles and his addiction. I think it's very powerful to piggyback on what both of the doctors have just said. Ray Charles was a rugged individual. He grew up in a time, particularly in America. I want you all to understand, there was a case called the Scottsboro case, where several black men have been accused of raping a white female, and I'm not going to teach again here. You can look at the citation, but his mother would have raised her black child, son, during a period in the aftermath of the Scottsboro brothers. It was one of the American tragedies of injustice in this society. It was very easy for somebody to be lynched, beaten, battered. And Ray Charles developed adaptive mechanisms to survive the pain in his life, and the panel's going to talk about that. But at the same time, when he developed those adaptive qualities, he also may have developed a level of arrogance or a level of fear, because arrogance sometimes is fear, that I can't let anybody see me be vulnerable. You know, many men in particular, in a society that stresses so much this notion of masculinity and being a man and what it means to be a man, you know, like some men can't cry at their mother's funeral. They're sitting there swollen up like a balloon because to cry would be to show weakness. And so, in fact, they said that Ray Charles had worked so hard to be independent, he had overcome, for all practical purposes, his blindness. He had overcome tragedies in his life. And so he had been one of the only artists that owned his own music long before anybody knew what that meant. He was independent. He had owned the rights to all his music, something that very few artists had. So in that regard, he said, I don't have no problem with heroin. I don't know what people are talking about. I buy the best heroin. I buy the best stuff. You can't even get this stuff. I buy the best heroin. And I'm writing all these fabulous songs. I'm performing all over the world. My heroin addiction is not bothering me at all. And that's how he went through his life, justifying the drug abuse. And then they said when he was going to serve 40 years in jail for illicit illegal drugs. So when he faced that reality, he had to decide, am I going to try to kick the heroin or am I going to jail for 40 years? So he didn't stop taking heroin because he had some epiphany. And I want many of you, let's substitute heroin for reefer for a moment. We're going to talk about that later on. So we got to, because there's some new research that's been coming out lately about excessive smoking of reefer in the brain. But we're going to talk about that later. But at any rate, when he was faced with the reality that he may go to jail, he then agreed to see this European therapist doctor. And when the European doctor met with Ray Charles was Ray Charles. He was independent. He was, I'll use the term arrogant just to make the point, because he was famous and he was untouchable. And the doctor said, I could give a shit who you are. I'll sit here all day with you. I'm getting paid. I don't care. If you don't want to talk to me, don't talk to me. And Ray Charles was like, well, fine. So every day they would come for that session. Ray Charles would play chess. The man would read his book. And that just went on for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And the man was like, I don't care how many records you got. And finally, Ray Charles opened up and started to talk. And that's what this panel is about today, is getting us to discuss the undiscussable. Part of genius and musical creativity is opening up to all of it. And when Ray Charles opened up and started to think about it, he ordered the man to leave. He said, get out. And when he left, Ray Charles cried, but he did not want the therapist or any man to see the strong Ray Charles cry. I want some of you to let that Michael Jackson said, to let that marinate for a moment, is how difficult it is for many of us to demonstrate vulnerability as artists and to look at what we feel vulnerable about. And it was at that point that Ray Charles said, all these years I've fought against racism. I fought against blind people treating me different because I'm blind. And I thought I was the master of my ship. And now I realize that this heroine is the master of my ship. And it's that day that Ray Charles stopped cold with the heroin. But you see, that story is powerful because it was about more than the heroin. It was about him recognizing that he had been delusional. And when the doctor said that genius is one step away from madness, he knew that he was on the precipice of madness and serving 40 years in. So I want to open it up now to the panel to take it from there, and let's launch this off. Yes, Zakiya.
I could tell you, if I wanted to, what makes me what I am. But I don't really want to, and you don't give a damn. That's Impasse by Langston Hughes.
Very powerful. Very powerful. Doctor, we can go back to Dr. White.
Yes. Well, I am a very practical, down-to-earth, straight-up, straightforward person. Don't come to see me. Don't come to see me because I'm going to talk to you. I mean, in my office I get funky with you because I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. You know what I'm saying? All right, so, really, and people who come to see me actually say that I can get away with cussing you out.
They all looked over at me, some of the students.
Because when you are in the grip, when you've been hijacked, you're in the back, you're bound and gagged, and the crack cocaine is driving the bus, okay, or the sex, or the eating, or the whatever it is, because there's one addiction and many behaviors.
Thank you. Obsession and compulsion.
Okay, so my job is to help cut right through that, and what I want to do is leave some practical things with you that you can actually use. Number one, rely on teamwork. Rely on teamwork. You can't do it by yourself. You can't do it by yourself. So you need a fellowship, and I will say to the fellowship, you need some professionals as well, because this is the current demonstration that in addition to the fellowship, there are people who have gone to medical school, who know molecular biology, all right, and biochemistry. And we can contribute to the conversation as well. It's balanced. It's balanced. Okay, but you need both. You need that teamwork. You need that body, mind, spirit, and community. Body, mind, spirit, community. These are the foundations. Now, I'm going to have you repeat one sentence after me. I want you to say this. Mindful,
Mindful,
wholesome,
Wholesome
habits.
habits.
Mindful, wholesome habits. This must be your foundation, because if you can do this, you're going to be able to make it, because your habits, listen to this, sow an action, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap a character. Sow a character, reap a destiny. Okay? Your character is going to take you there. So what I'm concerned about is the wholesome habits that you have. And I'll leave you with this one final thing. You're all in the music business, which is wonderful. PMP. Practice makes perfect. So your habits are what you practice, and I want you to practice these habits of mindfulness. And the final statement is what Bird said. He said, just perfect your instrument and then just play. But you gotta perfect your instrument, which is your practice, which is your habits. So you've gotta have some wholesome habits that ground you and help you.
Thank you so much. Venus, I want to come to you before I go to Eric, because I'm going to ask Eric a pretty challenging question about this, but just bouncing what the Dr. White just said, we were talking about this last night. I was doing a rehearsal last night for gonna sing tonight the BBC Two Ray Charles songs, and all the lyrics just went out of my head. That happens sometimes. And I just started making up stuff, you know, at that point, because I knew I had the rhythm of it all. I knew I had channeled Ray Charles. I just was turning the words around. Because Ray Charles often, when you're reading those words and they're written down, there's something foreign and strange about it because it's improvisational black dialect. So you never say it the same twice. I never sing anything the same twice. It is oppressive to me to be put in that position to do what they call a sound-alike. I know what my strengths are. Sound-alike is not one of them. I can't even imagine it, and so I have to really struggle. Now, some people say, well, maybe you're a professor, you should be able to do that. Well, yes, I should be, but I also know that's just not my expertise to mimic somebody else because I've worked so many years to be me. Tell me what you said you read about Ray Charles, which stuck with you, and give some of the examples you gave last night. It was very interesting.
All right, but I want to say something first, piggybacking on Dr. White, that is so important when you're talking to students who are coming through the entertainment business. Is so important. And he said practice makes perfect. And the word in French for rehearsal is répétition. Repetition. And you really need to do it until you hate it. Again and again and again and again until you really do hate it. And then you need to practice a little bit. Last night I was reading from, I recommend this book so highly. It's called, now what is it called? I'm having a private summer.
You don't know me.
But You Don't Know Me. It's written by Ray Charles's elder son, whose name is Ray Charles Robinson. And he said that his father always was very, very interested. You know, the drummer is important, everybody's important. And the level of their expertise is important, but it's the sound man who was extremely important to him, because if he was singing a song, Ray Charles, he might say, "But you don't know me." I said, and then if they don't get that and I say it, they're going to have to do it 200 more times until they get that and I said, because that space and that sparsity in the music is what gives Ray Charles his genius. Because we listen to, "But you don't know me," I said, "But you," and you hear the whole song, but that I said is very deliberate and very studied. And maybe the next time when he says, "But you don't know me, I told you," he wants to hear "I told you," and he wants music out so he can get "I told you" to come through. And you know, I just thought of something. God, my life has been so serendipitous. I did some work with the Raylettes. Never thought of it till this second. Never thought of that. Is that something to forget? And I loved the Raylettes. And this was when I was a chorus girl. That's when my show polish was coming through. You know.